there, welcome back to part 2 of our programme. You find us in Vacarești Park, which is in the south of Bucharest, surrounded by flowers, wild plants, even cuckoos, and I don't think we'll see any, but there are foxes in here as well. We've come here to meet an MEP, Adina Valean. Hello there.
Hi, hello.
Hi. Now, you're with the National Liberal Party in Romania, which is part of the centre-right.
Yes, it's the EPP at European level, European People's Party, centre-right, yeah.
And it's the party of the president.
The president, yes, Klaus Iohannis.
And you yourself have been president of the European Parliament's Environment Committee for the last 5 years. So, well, tell us about this nature reserve you've brought us to. It wasn't originally intended as a reserve, was it? It was flood defence under Ceausescu's time.
Yes, actually here it was a neighborhood of Bucharest. It was torn down by the communists, having a plan to build here a reservoir, water reservoir for the city. And well, then the revolution against communists came and the project was dropped. And then, without the intervention of human, the nature took over the place.
As we can see.
And it's something unique in Europe because you don't find sort of a delta is called here because it's wetland, a delta in the middle of a European big city. Yeah, indeed. So it's amazing, true.
It doesn't actually get any EU funding.
No, it doesn't. Well, that's my plan, to manage to bring a live program for this park. Usually you don't get finances being in a big city. That's a trick. But this is a unique situation, and I think it has to be treated uniquely. And I would like very much to see the financial footprint of Europe on environmental issues in Romania, because it was a very low uptake of European funds for environment in Romania, and I think it's a pity because we are a very rich country in terms of biodiversity and nature, and it's worth it for the citizens to see that Europe is contributing to preserve the biodiversity.
Well, let's stick with that environmental theme just for the moment. We'll watch a report together. Now, this is about a scandal that's being investigated in another part of Romania. It concerns rubbish being imported into the country, much of it from Western Europe, in fact, to be burned. Now, that's causing all kinds of problems with pollution, as you'll see in this report by Adeline Percept.
This is where much of Europe's waste goes up in smoke. In western Romania, the Cisca cement works no longer heats its kilns with fossil fuels, instead burning trash, like these tyres piled up in front of the factory. In the shadow of the incinerators lives Marius Mangu and his family.
There you see, I used to have 4 apple trees. They've all dried up and died.
It's not just Marius's trees that are in poor health. He says all the bees have died too. He and his neighbour Otilia say their health is suffering.
We cannot breathe. All we have is the smell of burning tires, burning textile. They burn all the junk.
Every day the window panes are covered with these fine dust particles.
Imagine what that does to your lungs.
The factory owners say they've invested 13 million euros to satisfy environmental regulations, but the company refused our request for an interview. At the border with Hungary, Nadlac is a gateway from Romania into the rest of the EU. Customs officers regularly seize unauthorised waste destined for the incinerators.
In the trucks carrying tyres from Germany, Austria or Italy, we have found every type of waste. We even had car batteries, things that are considered seriously harmful.
But the customs inspections can't keep up with the flow of trucks into Romania. According to State Prosecutor Teodor Nitsa, a specialist in the subject, every day dozens of cargoes of illegal waste are allowed into Romania, and he says the government has to act.
One solution is to make the prices the same. We get all the waste here because it's so economically attractive. It costs 17 euros to burn a ton of waste in Romania versus 250 euros a ton in Western Europe.
It's not just a question of cost. Romania's national laws allow for more than 100 types of waste to be incinerated. But environmental groups have sounded the alarm about the health risks.
We do not have a proper evaluation on the health effects on the people in the surrounding areas, which is really sad because there are about 100,000 of such people.
Back at Cisca, Marius and his neighbours are amongst those 100,000 seen as most at risk. Local doctors have warned about a high incidence of cancers in the region.
We're all going to be sick. It's just a question of time. Today, tomorrow. Everyone has the right to live. Everyone has the right to breathe fresh air.
China has drastically reduced the types of waste it accepts for disposal. With that outlet cut off, Romanians fear their country could become the dustbin for Western Europe.
Well, we have changed location here within Vacarești Park, but we're going to continue on that environmental theme with Adina Valean. Thanks for staying with us. We're sticking with that environmental subject from our report. Clearly, as we saw there are people making money from this, those sending the trash, people here in Romania as well. Can it really be stopped?
We have to go back to the concept of circular economy, where we reuse and then we recycle and make money in a positive way, which would also can bring money, but without burning the waste.
Let's talk about some broader issues for Romania. There's been a real political crisis over corruption. Now, your party is currently in the opposition, and it did very well, came out on top in the recent EU elections.
It's true.
How much do you see that as the voters trying to punish the government over this corruption issue?
I think the citizens have spoken very clearly. They do not support anymore the current government. But of course, it's up to my colleagues in the national parliament to continue to debate and try to come up with a solution to this political situation. Yeah.
Talking about corruption itself, it's not just a question of laws and reforms. It's also about the culture of corruption as well. People here have openly told us, yes, if you pay a bribe, then you'll get better medical service, for example, and there's recorded misuse of EU funds. Do you believe that real change is likely and possible when it comes to corruption?
I know for sure that the public is asking more and more to a resolution to this issue. And I think we are in the right path, but it takes, as you were mentioning, I think it will take a change in the mindset and in the culture also. By the other hand, corruption in itself, and even the misuse of European money, it's not something specific to the east of Europe. You, as a journalist, you know there are reports on very spectacular corruption cases in also big countries in Europe.
Certainly.
So we want to act at European level. We introduce the concept, and the office of the new general prosecutor. We hope a Romanian will fill that position. And then, of course, for corruption, and the state of the democracy and state of law, we are supporting the idea of having a kind of a mechanism to evaluate and monitor each member state.
Thank you very much for that, Adina Valean.
Thank you. You're very welcome.
Well, as you can see, we are back in Bucharest's Old Town. We're here to meet somebody who has a very particular perspective on this country, a French woman who married a Romanian and moved here. Hello there, Clotilde Amon.
Hi, Catherine.
Really nice to meet you. And I want to say you've just been elected as one of Romania's 33 MEPs.
That's right.
So you're here with a party that's only a few years old called USR, or Union to Save Romania. It's actually in the same group as Emmanuel Macron's party at the European Parliament. Going back to that name though, what does Romania need saving from?
It needs to be saved from fatalism. The level of the education of the people was good and they have high expectations. We need to tell them, and this is what we're doing, there is hope, we can rebuild this country at the level that you deserve.
It's a positive message, and speaking of rebuilding, it leads us onto this building that I know you wanted to show us. How does it fit into your theme of rebuilding? Tell us.
Maybe you know that Romania is in an earthquake zone. Many of the buildings that you see around you were impacted by the 1977 earthquake that killed many people, thousands, and the response of the authorities is what is impacted is marked to be demolished. We can renovate, we can rehabilitate.
So this building...
This is an example.
Okay.
And you have to see, you have all those people living in those buildings from the 20s, from the 30s, who everybody know will go down if there is an earthquake and nothing is being done. So we as well want to say, look, it can be rehabilitated. We need to do that even more in the buildings where people live. There is this huge risk, human risk, that needs to be addressed.
How much does EU funding come into this rehabilitation?
It is good that you're allocating a budget, but let's look at the results. This strategy has not been good, has not been enough for Romania. We need much stronger technical assistance. What the people want, it's not a budget that is allocated. They want implemented projects. There is this huge brain drain which has affected tremendously the country. We need here to build the infrastructure that they feel they need to keep working in this country.
Well, let's hold that thought and we'll just watch a report together with our viewers. Now, there is one consequence of the much lower cost of living here that might surprise you. There's a growing number of students coming here to Romania, particularly to learn medical professions, doctors, dentists, even veterinarians. Luke Brown has been to find out more about these students.
A bucolic setting for a revision session for these students in central Bucharest.
Et les petits vont être en hypoglycémie à cause de l'hypothermie. Et après...
Coming from all over France, they're here to study veterinary medicine in Romania. Many say it was either study here or give up on their dream career.
Most of us tried the entrance exams in France, and most of us missed out. It's pretty much our last chance to become a vet.
Marine and Paul are in their first and second years. They say studying 2,000 kilometers from home was worth it.
If you're between 18 and 22 and you decide to live abroad for 6 years, that shows how motivated you are.
It's also a demonstration of our admiration and love for this job.
The French section in Bucharest is part of a growing cohort of medical students choosing to leave the country. In France, the number of places in medical school for both doctors and vets are severely limited. Around 600 per year in veterinary school for around 2,000 candidates, and 9,000 places in medical school for over 30,000 candidates. That means an increasing number study outside France. Here in Romania, 2,000 enroll each year. Language isn't a worry as the curriculum is entirely taught in French. What's more, classes here are smaller than back home and there are more practical lessons. But the basics are much the same when it comes to exams.
It depends on the exams. There are so many subjects. Some of them are pretty easy.
The main difficulty is the amount of information you have to remember. That's it. It's not insurmountable.
Bucharest Vet School is EU accredited, meaning the diplomas here are valid across Europe. In France, the number of GPs and vets in rural areas has steadily declined in recent years. Finding a job back home shouldn't be a problem.
Our future colleagues in France need us because there aren't enough vets, especially in rural areas, because of the French selection system, and the French system hasn't been able to remedy that shortfall.
Vet school in Romania doesn't come cheap for the French section. While the cost of living is lower, tuition fees are around 5,000 euros a year for a 6-year course, twice as much as in France. It's a financial windfall for the university, but it firmly rejects accusations of qualifications for sale.
It's unacceptable. The only way to obtain your diploma is through studying. There is no other way. We have a very established system, and it respects the European accreditation regulations.
But those myths of low-quality qualifications or diplomas for sale are hard to shake back home for Marine and Paul.
We have to demonstrate that those prejudices aren't valid and demonstrate that just because we studied abroad doesn't mean we are less well qualified than our colleagues who trained in France.
There are a lot of prejudices. That might be changing because there are more and more doctors and vets that are from other countries. So perhaps people will get over those prejudices sooner rather than later.
They do have a role to play. In France, 10% of doctors and over 40% of vets are trained in other EU countries.
Well, as you can see, we've changed location once again. This is Victory Square in Bucharest, and we're still with Clotilde Armand. Clotilde, this is actually the place that in the winter of 2017 was full of Romanians in those historic protests.
It was minus 15, Catherine, and people were here to express freely that they wanted a better future for their country, for their children. They wanted to say no to the reforms, to the justice system. They wanted to say, we believe in our country, we want a different future.
As you can see, it's very calm now. There's only us in this square. A lot of people we've spoken to in Romania say, well, look, the government's cancelled these justice reforms. Romania's turned a page. Do you agree?
Well, we still need to be very, very cautious. There are some threats to the independency of the justice system. You know, this place is called Victory Place, and it's a victory from our point of view because the Romanians showed that they could mobilize themselves, that they care and they're ready to get involved when it's about something very important for their country. People were very optimistic. They believed in what they were doing, and they were doing it on a, it was not for their materialistic needs or to protect social benefits or something personal. It was really something that they wanted to share for their country.
Well, I can see in here that you are very optimistic about Romania. You're obviously starting this 5-year mandate as an MEP. So what are your priorities?
Well, I want to finish this revolution that started in 1989. We want to explain what is our perspective. We don't believe in the Europe with two speeds. We want a one-speed Europe, and this is possible. We know it is possible, but we have to explain what are our issues so that Europe can take them into account.
Well, Clotilde Dambon, thank you so much for giving us your point of view on this country. And that's where we will leave Romania as well, handing over the presidency of the European Union to Finland for the next 6-month period. But we will be keeping an eye on all things Romanian, especially with the presidential election in November. For now, though, thanks very much for watching. See you soon.